The Senior Rehab Podcast is sponsored by Great Seminars and Books. If you need high-quality geriatric con ed that's worth your time and money, check out Great. Owned by the living legend Carol Lewis, Great offers courses and products created by recognized leaders in geriatrics. Learn the most effective techniques for diagnosing and treating your patients. Just go to seniorrehabproject.com/great and get $25 off by using the code SRP25. The show is also sponsored by you, the listener. Go to seniorrehabproject.com/join to find out how you can help steer the direction of this movement and join our monthly meetup. Once again, that is seniorrehabproject.com/join. Hit me!
Welcome to the Senior Rehab Podcast.
The podcast for rehab clinicians that want to better serve older adults.
And now, your host, Dustin Jones.
Hello friends, this week's short comes from Kate Wason. She's a second-year DPT student at Duke University. She runs a blog along with Amy, who is a new Lexingtonian actually. It's titled Fit Nerd Physios, and she wrote a post titled It's Not About You. This is on April 18th of 2017. Links in the show notes. But I wanted to publish this episode because I feel like this is a great post for students that may be going into an acute care rotation, students that are in an acute care rotation, clinicians that have students, or even people in academia. I feel like this is a great post to really kind of capture some of the beauty and the mundane of much of the work that we do in the different settings, whether it's acute care, SNF, home health, I mean, even outpatient as well. But I know that I really, this message really resonated with me because it's those tiny little interactions that may seem boring or insignificant, but then when you take a step back and realize how big of an impact that we can have in some very difficult situations in people's lives, it makes this job very, very rewarding. And I think Kate summarized that really well. So enough of my rambling. Here is Kate Wason reading her post, It's Not About You.
Hi, my name is Kate Wason. I'm a second-year Doctor of Physical Therapy student about to become a third year, and I wanted to share with you guys the story of when I really realized what physical therapy is all about. It's a story about a clinical rotation that I had a couple weeks ago at the University of North Carolina Hospital. It's a story that I originally wrote on my blog, and you can find it at fitnerdphysios.com. So without further ado, it's not about you. A year ago, when I first started PT school, I was terrified of acute care PT. I thought it would be disgusting, especially after one of my professors joked about patients pooping on my shoes. Also, Foley bags? No thanks. I also thought it would be boring. I mean, managing lines and leads, walking patients around the hallways. I didn't understand why doctors of physical therapy needed to be the ones mobilizing patients. It just seemed so below our skill level, so below our diagnostic capacity. Like, why couldn't the nurses do it? A few weeks ago, though, I had my second mini clinical rotation on the acute care oncology floor at University of North Carolina Hospital. I'd had fun back in November at our first rotation there, and I did notice that all of our patients seemed happier after walking around, or if they couldn't walk, after just a little bit of movement. But I still wasn't sold. This week started out rough. On the first day, none of our patients were able to get out of bed. I'd had 2 patients assigned to me. So as background, we work in teams of 4, and each of my classmates and I are allowed to take the lead on treatment for at least 1 patient per day. So both of the 2 patients I had that day refused treatment. So as usual, my classmates and I spent our lunch periods complaining about how this job was beneath us, how we weren't getting to use any of the new manual therapy skills we'd spent a year learning, or really using our diagnostic brain power at all. And then finally, that Friday, I had an experience that was truly life-changing. We had a young man with cancer who had spread to his brain, and it was presenting like a stroke. We'd met him back on Monday, and at that point, he had no volitional movement and no speech. By Wednesday, we actually got him sitting up with Max Assist, and he had enough movement to fist bump my classmate, was even able to tell us what time it was on the clock. by Friday, we had him in sitting, still with max assist, but he was doing short arc quads, talking about his favorite basketball team. And towards the end of the session, he asked us if he could stand up. We all looked at each other and were like, he's max assist to sit. But we decided, sure, why not? There are 4 of us. If he's ever going to stand up, it's got to be now. There's so many of us. So we got him standing. This young man had not left his bed since January. We had this rotation in mid-April. And we had him standing up. He didn't have a lot of speech, but you could just see in his eyes what this meant to him. I remember that, I was holding him up and a group of physicians on rounds had stopped outside the door. I saw them approach and I saw one of them reach for the doorknob and then just stop. Their eyes were all glued to us. Clearly, this was a big deal. So eventually he got tired. We got him back in bed and found his caregiver and told her what had happened. And she started crying. It was enough to make me cry, almost. So, to all the PTs and the students out there, this is what it's all about. This career, it's all about helping patients get their lives back through movement. Your patients don't care about your fancy manual therapy techniques. They don't care where you got your DPT. They probably don't care that you have a doctorate degree at all, to be honest. And they don't care that you're better at diagnosis than most physicians. People don't care about that. Your patients want their lives back. And nowhere is that more true than in acute care, where your patient might be a former student athlete that's had everything taken from them by a disease that no one can predict or prevent. But truth be told, I think this is true for most any population, for any human being. We all just want our lives back. And after all, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care, as the saying goes. As PTs, we're trained to heal, protect, and build our patients up through movement. We have such a nuanced understanding of why movement is necessary, and we're acutely aware of how devastating a lack of mobility can be for most people. This is how we're trained. It's not how nurses, physicians, or PAs are trained, and that's why it has to be us. We are the movement experts. That's the very definition of our profession, or it should be at least. And that's why it's so important to have doctors of physical therapy serving in the hospital. It's not about your degree. It's not about your skills. It's not about how well you can professionally network or how big of a social media following you have. It's not whether you can distinguish patellofemoral pain syndrome from patellar tendonitis without imaging. It's about your patient and whether you're guiding them towards their best possible life. In an athletic setting, sure, that might mean breaking out your best transverse abdominis exercises or the Graston tools. In acute care, it probably just means getting a patient to stand up. That is no less important and no less impactful. Is it less mentally challenging for you? Probably, but it's not about you.
Hit me! Thank you for listening to the Senior Rehab Podcast. I appreciate your time, and if you enjoyed this episode, do me one favor. Share it with one other person that would benefit. Thank you. If you want to see the show notes or find more episodes, just go to seniorrehabproject.com. And until next time, my friends, do not forget to stay funkin'. The Senior Rehab Podcast is sponsored by Great Seminars and Books. If you need high-quality geriatric con ed that's worth your time and money, check out Great. Owned by the living legend Carol Lewis, Great offers courses and products created by recognized leaders in geriatrics. Learn the most effective techniques for diagnosing and treating your patients. Just go to seniorrehabproject.com/great and get $25 off by using the code SRP25. The show is also sponsored by you, the listener. Go to seniorrehabproject.com/join to find out how you can help steer the direction of this movement and join our monthly meetup. Once again, that is seniorrehabproject.com/join.